When I first heard the concept of 21st century learning, I had the assumption that there was a high emphasis on technology because we live in a world that has become so digitalized. After watching Tony Wagner's TED Talk video and reading Sharon and David's article, 21st Century Learning and Learners, I have come to learn that 21st century learning is much more than technology and digitalizing. 21st century learning is about adapting to the needs of our society. Both the video and reading acknowledge that we are currently living in an unsustainable way environmentally. Additionally, I would like to address that all systems within Canadian society, education included, tend to be very Eurocentric, and this can be tied back to colonialism. There is a lack of other knowledge systems and pedagogies within education, and 21st century learning to me means bringing forth those other knowledge systems into our classrooms because we have much to learn from other cultures. For example, prior to colonization, Indigenous people lived on the continent for a millennia before settlers arrived, so we must ask, why were the resources so rich and vibrant? Tanse, nitsi nia, nihiao, esquio. I can only speak on my own customs and teachings, but what I was taught growing up is to never take more than you need and always leave behind stuff so that you don't interfere with ecosystems. This is a photo of me and my son. The reason that I've chosen to share this image is because this was us last semester when we went on a walk with Dwayne Donald. I felt like this photo was the perfect example of what learning outside the classroom can look like, and I would like to adopt some practices that Dr. Dwayne Donald shared. In his course, he talked about land-based learning. He engages in this practice when he does the river walk with students. While on this walk, he discussed the history about the area of Edmonton. The way he told the story was interesting because he spoke in such detail about the history while being in the area where those histories took place. So it was like you were immersed into that time, seeing things as they happened. Learning the history of the places that I teach and taking students out onto the land is something that I would like to adopt, especially when I discuss Canada and Indigenous peoples' history in social studies. Another practice that I would like to adopt is having sharing circles and arranging desks in a big circle or square around the edge of the classroom and create an open space in the middle. Some of my favorite classes in university had this type of seating arrangement, and it felt like it created a more welcoming environment. Students were able to have open dialogue without others having to turn their heads or look behind them to see who was speaking. I was able to view all of my peers, and in turn, this helped me feel more connected to them. I remember people's faces and names better, and making friends in classes was easier, all because of this seating arrangement. As I previously stated, we have much to learn from other cultures, and that is because our education reproduces knowledge that is derived from a single worldview. In modern day, people no longer have to rely on their society for survival. I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, but Bowers explains that because of this, there has been a rise of individualism and promotion of a Western model of development that is focused on consumerism. This is problematic because, like Tony, Sharon, and David acknowledged, this is unsustainable. Well, I believe that it's important to be technologically literate. I don't put a huge value of technology in my teaching. My visualizing of what my classroom will look like is much different. Bowers discusses the concept of social Darwinian thinking about the backwardness of third world cultures, and this includes Indigenous societies. The way that I interpret this is that because Indigenous people lived off the land and because European settlers were more individualistic and advanced, quote unquote, with their technology, they were considered more evolved and on a higher hierarchy compared to societies that are not. However, this is a false colonial way of thinking. Questions that are important to ask are, what if our ancestors had it right, and it's us who lost the true meaning of life over the years? Eurocentric ways of thinking has caused us to have an answer for everything and to measure and scientifically prove everything we learn. Oral histories are questioned and creation stories are considered tales. While there are some positives, like using scholarly peered resources so you don't perpetuate false information, in some ways this also limits our thinking when we deny the past. When it comes to living sustainably and in 21st century education, I believe that it is important to seek out intergenerational knowledge and to keep those traditions alive because they were sustainable. As educators, we need to keep an open mind, utilize other pedagogies, adopt practices like land-based learning, and teach our students how to only take what they need and to be less materialistic because those things are not sustainable for our environment. Thank you for listening. Hi.